Today, we'll be looking at the most damaging retirement lie that's keeping people from achieving their dream retirement. As the partner of a financial planning firm, I've watched this same lie repeatedly delay retirement plans for those who are actually ready to retire. This is why today I'm going to expose this retirement myth that may be the only thing standing between you and your retirement independence. Let's get right into it. One of the biggest mistakes that I see pre-retirees make is believing that they need a 95 to 100% success rate in their Monte Carlo simulation before they can retire. Monte Carlo analysis is a powerful tool. It runs thousands of simulations to model different retirement outcomes based on various investment returns, inflation, and spending patterns. But the way people interpret these results is often wrong. Here's the issue. A 100% Monte Carlo score doesn't mean a perfect retirement. It means an extremely conservative one. If your plan shows a 100% success rate, it simply means that you are assumed to be spending a very small percentage from your savings each year, requiring little, if any, growth on your money. In other words, you could be working longer than you need to or spending less than you need to in retirement. Retirement planning is about managing uncertainty, not eliminating it entirely. People get fixated on a perfect Monte Carlo score, thinking that anything less than 100% means failure. But the reality is, financial projections are just that. They're projections and nothing more. Here's a slightly more detailed description of how a Monte Carlo retirement simulation works. The computer is taking your financial savings, going out in time, and withdrawing the amount that you're assumed to need from your portfolio each year to make up the difference between what you're spending and what you're receiving from your Social Security and your pensions. At the same time, every year of retirement, it's assuming that your portfolio rises and falls based on how your money is spread across different assets like stocks and bonds. It repeats this process usually 1,000 times to calculate how many of those 1,000 trials you're projected to still have money at an assumed life expectancy or some age in the future. So if you want to assume that you'll live until age 90, it will look at all of the simulated retirements, look out to age 90, and see if you still have money. So if that's 900 of 1,000 times, you'd have a 90% probability of success, 700 of 1,000, 70% chance of success, and so on. The first and probably most obvious problem with this is that it's assuming that you know when you're going to pass away. And of course, we don't know this and can only make an educated guess. It's also making a lot of other assumptions, which is beyond the scope of this video. But most importantly, it's using the mathematical principle of the law of large numbers to derive some probability to give you an idea of your risk. This is a sophisticated process, but it's by no means perfect. I'll dig into how to use a Monte Carlo simulation correctly later in this video, but the truth is, you don't need a perfect Monte Carlo score. What you really need is a realistic one. I've worked with many pre-retirees who refuse to retire despite having very good odds of success. Part of this is my fault because it can be difficult to explain this concept, but I'm also a wet blanket and refuse to be the advisor who knowingly presides over somebody's financial demise. And I genuinely believe that 100% success is a bit overboard. Now, I know that seeing a less than perfect Monte Carlo score for your retirement might seem scary, so make sure that you check out the link in the description after you finish this video, where all you need to do is complete a quick survey on my website about your retirement situation, and within a few days, you'll get a personalized video from me directly to your inbox, showing you what success rates actually mean for your retirement. Many pre-retirees believe that their retirement plan must show a 100% probability of success in the simulations for their retirement to help them feel confident about pulling the trigger. Anything less than perfect makes them think that they're not ready. The biggest misconception: that Monte Carlo scores predict the exact outcome of their retirement. They assume that a 90% success rate means a 10% chance of financial ruin. But that's not how these simulations actually work. A lower success rate doesn't mean certain failure. It doesn't mean you're going to run out of money in retirement. Instead, it means that there's a greater likelihood that you'll have to make an adjustment at some point. But because these numbers are so misunderstood, they create undue anxiety and ultimately lead to uninformed financial decisions. This can lead to serious consequences for your retirement timing. Instead of focusing on real-world sustainability, pre-retirees chase a perfect, unattainable number. This can result in working longer than needed, even when retirement is feasible. It can lead to major lifestyle sacrifices in return for an imaginary level of certainty. And most importantly, it can create undue anxiety during what should be an incredibly fulfilling period of your life. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, you may be thinking that the messaging of this video goes against how I tend to project my underlying beliefs. And it does to an extent, but that's really not the point. I do believe in making sacrifices to minimize your risk, and I do believe that balance is the ultimate answer when you're navigating future uncertainty. This video is simply about interpreting a form of analysis in the appropriate way so that you can make an informed decision that's based on a proper interpretation of your risk. Chasing a perfect Monte Carlo score is likely holding you back. A 100% Monte Carlo success rate is comparable to having a retirement plan that could survive Armageddon. The worst trials assume wildly unrealistic combinations of market crashes, economic downturns, and spending needs, all happening simultaneously. But here's the key. The Monte Carlo typically also assumes that you make no adjustments. Think about it. If we're faced with an incredibly unlikely doomsday scenario, chances are you'd find ways to adapt while still generally maintaining your lifestyle. A 100% success rate assumes not only a worst-case scenario, but also that you refuse to make any changes, even if you're in your late 80s and would likely be adjusting your spending naturally. If you're someone who values self-education and watches a lot of videos, you might be wondering, isn't this what the retirement guardrail strategy is designed to address? And the answer is yes. However, I don't typically advocate for this approach because I believe that it's fundamentally flawed. The guardrail strategy assumes that retirees will naturally spend less in a down market and more when markets are strong. In my view, this can create an overly optimistic perception of retirement readiness. Instead, I believe that a retirement plan should first be structured to support a retiree's actual spending needs. And if market conditions turn unfavorable, adjustments can be made as necessary, rather than being a built-in expectation from the start. In my experience, it can be really easy to overestimate our ability and our willingness to cut our lifestyles and spend less money. Now, that may not be the case for everyone, but for the average person, I do believe that it is. Now that you've seen why perfect Monte Carlo scores can be misleading, let's look at how one hypothetical person transformed their retirement by understanding what these numbers really mean. Let's say they run a Monte Carlo simulation and see that there's an 88% probability that they'll be successful if they live until the age of 93. Their immediate reaction, there's a 12% chance that we'll run out of money. That's too risky. We need 100% before we can retire. They start reconsidering retirement, even though their jobs are harming their health. But let's take a closer look. They also review the worst 200 of the 1,000 simulated retirements and find that even in those scenarios, their money lasts until they're well into their late 80s. And that's assuming they make zero adjustments to their spending, something that's highly unrealistic. Most retirees naturally spend less in their 80s simply because they slowed down. And this couple has already accounted for the potential for ballooning of their expenses in their later years to cover rising healthcare and long-term care-related costs. So their assumptions are already relatively conservative. And even in the bad case scenarios, their money is lasting beyond their expected life expectancies. Yet they're holding off on retirement, chasing an arbitrary level of certainty that just doesn't exist. If we take the time to highlight the built-in conservatism of their assumptions, they start to see the bigger picture. They begin to understand the real point of this exercise, not to chase a perfect score, but to assess whether they have a solid, flexible plan. To take it a step further, I'd even flatten their expenses as they age to reflect a more realistic spending trajectory adjusted for aging. After making this adjustment, their probability of still having money in their early 90s jumps above 95%. At this point, they finally grasp the reality. They can retire. There's no way to guarantee success, but that was never the goal. The goal is to minimize the likelihood that they'll be forced to make drastic lifestyle adjustments. Now that you know how this common retirement misconception might be holding you back, you can break free from limiting beliefs about your retirement readiness. And to help you gain clarity, I've created a detailed assessment that cuts through common retirement misconceptions. After completing this brief questionnaire on my website, you'll receive a personalized video where I'll analyze your specific situation and show you what's truly possible for your retirement. Just click the link below to get started. I'll see you in the next one.